The combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of system. 4471 Alpha. Captain Katie Brooks stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, looking at the main screen with growing horror. What she saw made her stomach feel sick. 3 planets circled a dying star. But these were not normal planets anymore. They looked like someone had stripped all the life away from them. No green forests, no blue oceans, no white clouds, just gray rock and twisted metal. My God, whispered Lieutenant Alex Murphy, her tactical officer. What happened here? Next to the human ships, the Federation vessels looked small and fragile. Admiral Corbathul commanded the Federation fleet from his flagship Harmony of Worlds. His ship was beautiful, with smooth curves and bright lights. It was built for peace and exploration, not for war. All ships, maintain formation, Admiral. Jake Morrison's voice came over the radio. He was commanding the human battle group from the UES Intrepid. We go in slow and careful. Captain Danny Walsh piloted his ship, the UES Vanguard, closer to the first planet. This had been the home of the Keth-Mori people. The Federation records said 20 billion aliens had lived here just 6 months ago. I am reading 0 life signs, reported Dr. Amy Rodriguez from her science station. Was a xenarchaeologist, someone who studied dead alien civilizations. I'd never seen anything like this. Not just 0 life, added Sergeant Nick Johnson, looking at his equipment readings. I am not picking up any organic matter at all. It is like every living thing just disappeared. Danny made a decision. We are going down to take a look. Sir. Are you sure that is safe? Asked Amy. Probably not, Danny replied. But we need to know what we are dealing with. The shuttle landed on what used to be the biggest city on the planet. The team put on their spacesuits and stepped outside. What they found was beyond anything they had expected. The buildings were still there, but they were wrong. The metal had been twisted into impossible shapes that hurt to look at. Some structures seemed to bend space around them, making the air shimmer like heat waves. This does not follow any laws of physics, I know, Amy said, scanning one of the twisted buildings. With her equipment, Nick walked over to what looked like it might have been a vehicle. When he touched it, his glove went right through the metal like it was made of water. Double quotes, "Hey guys," he called out. I think this stuff is not really solid anymore. Amy came over to look. She ran her scanner over the vehicle. The molecular structure is completely broken down. It is like someone took apart every atom and put them back together wrong. Danny was examining what looked like it might have been a statue. Whatever did this, it was not just destroying things. It was changing them. Back in space, the Federation ships were trying to scan the other 2 planets. The results were the same everywhere. No life, no normal matter, just these strange, twisted structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Admiral Morrison, came Corfell's voice over the radio. My science team thinks we should leave. This place feels dangerous. Not yet, Jake replied. We need more information. Katie, take your ship and check out the second planet. Katie nodded to her crew. You heard him? Let us go see what happened to the Yelani. The UES Defiance moved toward the second planet. They got closer. The ship's sensors started acting strange. The readings kept changing, showing things that could not be possible. Captain Alex called out, I am getting some weird readings. It looks like there is something moving on the surface. Katie looked at her screen. First she saw nothing but the same gray wasteland. Then she saw it. Dark shapes were moving between the twisted buildings. It seemed to flow like liquid, but they cast no shadows. Are those the things that did this? She asked. Before anyone could answer, the dark shapes suddenly looked up at their ship. Even though they were hundreds of miles above the surface, Katie felt like the things were. Staring right at her, Captain, Alex said, his voice shaking. Those things just disappeared from the surface. I cannot find them on sensors anymore. Katie was about to respond when alarms started ringing all over the ship. Red lights flashed on every wall. Hull breach on Deck 7, someone shouted. That is impossible, Katie said. We are in space. Nothing hit us. Then they saw it. A dark shape was moving through the walls of the ship like they were not there. It looked like a shadow, but shadows do not move on their own. As it passed through the metal walls, the metal began to twist and change just like the buildings on the planet. All hands battle stations, Katie yelled into her communicator. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. The shadow creature moved toward the engine room. Everything it touched began to dissolve. The walls, the floor, even the air seemed to disappear where it passed. On the other Federation ships, the same thing was happening. The shadow creatures had somehow traveled from the planet's surface directly into their vessels. They moved through solid matter like it was not there. Everything they touched simply stopped existing. Admiral Corvithal watched in horror as his beautiful ship began to fall apart around him. The creatures were not just destroying the harmony of worlds, they were eating it. The metal, the electronics, even the life support systems were being consumed by the dark entities. All ships retreat immediately, he ordered. But it was too late for many of the Federation vessels. Shadow creatures were inside them all. The Altarian science ship Gentle Breeze tried to jump to hyperspace. But the creatures had eaten the jump drive. The ship just sat there, slowly dissolving from the inside out. The Nexari exploration vessel Crystal Song fired its weapons at the creatures inside the ship. The energy beams went right through the shadows and hit the ship's own walls, making the damage worse. One by one, the Federation ships were being consumed. Their crews sent desperate messages as they died. The creatures feed on everything, came one transmission. Our weapons make them stronger. They are eating the hull, the engines, even the oxygen in the air, said another. Admiral Corville made one final transmission before his ship was completely consumed. Human vessels, they feed on energy itself. Nothing can stop them. Save yourselves. But the humans did not run. Colonel Ben Hayes was commanding the Marines aboard the UES Relentless. When the shadow creatures appeared on his ship, he did something that no Federation race had ever tried. He ordered his men to fight back with physical weapons. Load kinetic rounds, he shouted to his troops. No energy weapons. Use bullets, grenades, anything that does not give off power. The Marines opened fire with their projectile weapons. The bullets were just pieces of metal moving very fast. They did not use energy like laser guns did. Something amazing happened. When the bullets hit the shadow creatures, the creatures actually seemed to feel it. They pulled back like they were hurt. It worked, Ben yelled. Keep firing. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Katie saw what was happening on Ben's ship. She got on the radio to all the human vessels. All ships use kinetic weapons only, no energy weapons. Pete, kinetic weapons only. The human ships were different from the Federation vessels, were built for war, with railguns and missile systems that fired solid projectiles instead of energy beams. Captain Greg Turner commanded the UES Sovereign. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Maria Santos, targeted the shadow creatures with the ship's railguns. The metal slugs moved at incredible speed, hitting the creatures and actually causing damage. For the first time in millions of years, the shadow creatures felt pain. They had consumed thousands of civilizations, but none had ever fought back. Effectively, these new aliens were different. The shadow creatures tried to call for help. More of them appeared from the twisted planets below. Soon, there were hundreds of the dark entities swarming around the human ships, but the humans kept fighting. They used missiles, railgun slugs, and even launched physical debris at the creatures. Everything that did not use energy seemed to hurt. The Shadows' Admiral Jake Morrison coordinated the battle from his flagship. All ships maintain formation. Do not let them separate us. The battle lasted for 6 hours. By the end, most of the Federation ships were gone. Only a few had managed to jump to hyperspace before the creatures got inside them, but all of the human ships survived. They had lost some crew members and taken damage, but they were still fighting. The shadow creatures seemed confused. They had never faced organized resistance before. After losing dozens of their own, they retreated back to the planets below. In the silence that followed, the surviving Federation ships sent messages of disbelief. How did you do that? Asked Captain Yelenara of the Nexari vessel that had escaped. How did you hurt them? Jake Morrison looked at the dead planets on his screen. He thought about the billions of aliens who had died here, in the Federation. Ships that had been consumed in minutes. Fight, he said simply. It is what we do. The alarm rang through the quiet halls of Station Omega-7. Zethkar looked up from his morning tea, his blue skin glowing softly in the dim light. He worked as a communications officer for the Galactic Federation. His job was to listen for signals from across the galaxy. Most days were boring, but today was different. The computer screen showed something strange. A signal was coming from a star system that no one had ever seen before. Zethkar had worked at this job for 20 years. He knew the signals from 12,000 different alien races. This signal was not like any of them. He called his boss right away. "Sir, you need to see this," Zethkar said into his communicator. His voice was shaking a little. Captain Veltar arrived 5 minutes later. She was tall and made of living crystal. Her people, the Nexari, were one of the oldest races in the galaxy. Looked at the screen with her glowing eyes. "Where is this coming from?" she asked. "System 4471 Alpha," Zethkar replied. "We have never had any contact with that area before." Veltar studied the data. The signal was strong but broken. It seemed to cut in and out like someone was trying to send a message but kept getting interrupted. "Can you clean it up?" she asked. Single quotes, KAR. Worked on his computer for an hour. Slowly, the signal became clearer. What they heard made them both step back from the screen. It was a voice, speaking in a language they had never heard. But the universal translator was able to figure out some of the words. The voice was scared. Very scared. It came from nowhere, the voice said. "Our weapons do nothing to them. They eat everything. They eat the ground, the air, even the light. From our sun, please, if anyone can hear this, stay away. Do not come here. They will find you too." Then the signal stopped. Veltar and Zethkar looked at each other. In all their years of working together, they had never heard anything like this. "Send a message to the High Council," Veltar said. "Tell them we need to have a meeting, right away." 3 days later, the High Council met on the Federation's main planet. The council room was huge, with seats for representatives from hundreds of different worlds. Most of the aliens there had never seen violence in their entire lives. The Federation had been at peace for over 1,000 years. High Counselor Valterra spoke to the group. She was Veltar's sister and much older. Her crystal body was darker, showing her age and wisdom. "We have received a disturbing signal from an unknown system," she began. 3 different races appear to have lived there. All of them sent similar messages before going silent. She played the recordings for the council. The room became very quiet as they listened to the scared voices. Kethmori were the first to send a message, Veltara continued. "They said something was eating their cities. 2 days later, we heard from the Yelani. They said the same thing. The last message came from the Zorbuk. After that, nothing." An old alien from the Altarian race raised his hand. His people looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and no hair. "What do you think these creatures are?" he asked. "We do not know," Veltara admitted. "But we think we should send someone to find out. If these things are dangerous, we need to know about them." Another council member spoke up. She was from a race that looked like large insects. "With golden wings, who would we send? Our ships are built for peace, not for fighting unknown enemies." Veltara had been thinking about this question. "There is one race that might be able to help us. They are new to our Federation, but they have experience with dangerous situations." "You mean the humans?" asked the Altarian. "Yes. They have only been with us for 3 years, but their ships are different from ours. They are built for war." Many of the council members looked uncomfortable. Most Federation races had given up violence long ago. The idea of asking someone to fight for them felt wrong. "Are we sure this is necessary?" asked the insect-like alien. Veltara played one more recording. This one was different. It was not a distress call. It was something else. The voice was deep and strange. It did not sound like any known alien race. When it spoke, the words seemed to make the air itself feel cold. "We hunger," the voice said. "We have found new feeding grounds. Soon, we will spread to consume all that exists. Nothing can stop us. We are eternal." The council room was completely silent. "I think," said Veltara, "that we need the humans." Earth's Admiral Jake Morrison was eating breakfast when his communicator buzzed. He was the head of Earth's Space Navy. At 50 years old, he had gray hair and tired eyes from years of military service. "Admiral, you have an urgent message from the Galactic Federation," his assistant told him. Jake put down his coffee and walked to his office. The message was from High Counselor Veltara herself. That was unusual. Usually the Federation talked to Earth through lower-level officials. The message was simple. "We need your help with the situation. Please come to Federation headquarters. As soon as possible, bring your best people." Jake called his staff together. Chief Science Officer Lisa Campbell arrived first. She was young for her position, only 35, but she was the smartest person Jake had ever met. Her red hair was always messy because she forgot to comb it when she was thinking about science problems. Colonel Malsperez came next. He was the head of Earth Space Marines. Ryan was a big man with dark skin and muscles from years of training. He did not talk much, but when he did speak, people listened. "What do you think they want?" Lisa asked. "I do not know," Jake replied. They sounded worried. I have never heard them ask for help before. The three humans took a ship to Federation headquarters. The trip took 2 days. When they arrived, they could see that something was wrong. Usually the Federation building was busy with aliens from all over the galaxy. Today, it seemed almost empty. Veltara met them at the entrance. Jake had met her before, but she looked different now. Her crystal body was dimmer than usual, and she moved more slowly. "Thank you for coming so quickly," she said. "We have a problem, and we think you might be the only ones who can help us." She led them to a private room and showed them the recordings. Jake, Lisa, and Ryan listened without saying anything. When the recordings ended, Ryan spoke first. "How many ships do you want us to send?" Veltara looked surprised. "You are not afraid?" "Of course we are afraid," Jake said. "Being afraid does not mean we run away. It means we get ready to fight." Lisa was studying the data on her tablet. "These signal patterns are interesting. Whatever these creatures are, they seem to absorb energy. That might be why normal weapons do not work against them." "Can you help us?" Veltara asked. Jake looked at his 2 officers. Ryan nodded. Lisa was already making notes about what kind of equipment they would need. "Yes," Jake said. "We can help. But we do this our way." Veltara agreed immediately. The humans solved the problem as long as they solved it. 3 hours later, Jake was back on Earth, talking to the president and the military leaders. Within 6 hours, they had decided to send a full battle group to investigate Captain Katie. Brooks got the call while she was sleeping. She was the captain of the UES Defiance, one of Earth's newest warships. At 28, she was the youngest ship captain in the human fleet. "Pack your bags," Jake told her over the phone. "We are going to make first contact with something that eats planets." Katie smiled. This was exactly the kind of job she had joined the Space Navy to do. The human ships would leave Earth in 2 days. None of them knew what they would find when they got there, but they were ready to find out. Dr. Susan Clark worked without sleep for 3 days straight. Her mobile laboratory aboard the U.S. Sovereign was filled with samples of the strange twisted metal from the dead planets. She had also managed to capture some residue from where the shadow creatures had been hit by human weapons. Susan was Earth's best xenobiologist. She had studied alien life forms for 15 years. But these shadow creatures were unlike anything she had ever seen before. "They are not really alive," she told Captain Greg Turner over the ship's communication system. "But they are not dead. Either they exist in some state between the two." Greg looked tired. His ship had taken heavy damage in the battle 3 days ago. "What exactly are we fighting, Doctor?" Susan looked at her data one more time before answering. "I think they are made of pure energy that has learned to think. They feed on all other forms of energy to make themselves stronger. That explains why our laser weapons made them bigger instead of hurting them," Greg said. "Exactly. Every time someone shoots them with an energy weapon, they absorb that energy and become more powerful. But kinetic weapons are different. They're just matter moving fast. No energy for the creatures to eat." On the UES Defiance, Captain Katie Brooks was dealing with her own problems. The shadow creatures had damaged her ship's hull in several places. Her crew was working around the clock to fix the holes. Lieutenant Alex Murphy brought her a report that made her worry. "Captain, our sensors are picking up movement in the deeper parts of the system. I think more of those things are coming." Katie looked at the sensor data. There were dozens of new contacts moving toward them from the direction of the system's center. Each one was the size of a small ship. "How many?" she asked. "At least 50, maybe more. They're moving fast." Katie got on the radio to Admiral Morrison. "Admiral, we have incoming hostiles. Lots of them." Morrison was in his ready room, studying reports from all the human ships. The battle had been won, but barely. They had lost 30 crew members, and 2 ships were badly damaged. "How long until they reach us?" asked Katie. 6 hours at their current speed. Jake made a decision that would have seemed crazy to most Federation races. Instead of running away, he decided to attack first. "All ships, prepare for combat operations. You're going to meet them halfway." The surviving Federation vessels watched in amazement as the human battle group moved toward the incoming threat. Captain Yelenara of the Nexari ship sent a message to Jake. "Admiral Morrison, are you insane? There are too many of them. We should retreat and ask for reinforcements." Jake's reply was simple. "We do not run from fights. We win them." Colonel Ben Hayes was preparing his Marines for what might be their last battle. His men were loading their weapons with kinetic rounds and checking their armor systems. "Listen up," he told his troops. "These things have been eating civilizations for who knows how long. Today, they learn what happens when they mess with humans." Private Tyler Adams raised his hand. He was young, only 22, but he had grown up in Detroit where violence was common. "Sir, I have an idea. What if we use explosives instead of bullets?" Ben looked interested. "Explain." "Well, sir, explosives are just chemicals that release energy by pushing things apart real hard. No electricity, no lasers, just a big push. Maybe that would hurt them more than bullets." Ben smiled. It was a crazy idea, but crazy ideas sometimes worked. "Load explosive rounds in half the weapons. We'll try both." Dr. Susan Clark made another important discovery while the fleet prepared for battle. She found that the shadow creatures were not acting independently. They were connected to each other through some kind of invisible network. "Admiral," she called Jake on the emergency channel, "I think they have a hive mind. They share information instantly across any distance." "What does that mean for us?" Jake asked. "It means they learn from every battle. If we hurt one of them, they all know how we did it. They will adapt." Jake thought about this. It was both good news and bad news. It's bad because the enemy would get smarter. Good because humans were very good at adapting to. The two forces met in the empty space between planets. The shadow creatures came at the human ships in a coordinated attack, but this time they were ready for kinetic weapons. They tried to dodge the railgun shots and missile attacks, but the humans had learned too. Captain Danny Walsh of the UES Vanguard used a new tactic. Instead of shooting directly at the creatures, he fired his weapons to create a wall of projectiles that the shadows could not avoid. "Flak pattern Alpha," he ordered his weapons officer. "Fill the space around them with metal." The strategy worked. Several shadow creatures were torn apart by the storm of metal fragments. But the others learned quickly and began moving in ways that avoided the flak patterns. Lieutenant Maria Santos was operating the weapons on Captain Greg Turner's ship. She noticed something important during the battle. "Captain, the creatures are trying to get close to our ships. I think they want to phase through our holes like they did before." Greg had an idea. "All power to engines. Keep our distance and shoot from far away." This started a deadly game of cat and mouse. The shadow creatures tried to get close enough to invade the human ships. The humans tried to stay far enough away to use their weapons safely. The battle lasted for 8 hours. By the end, the humans had destroyed most of the attacking creatures, but they had learned something troubling. More shadows were coming from deeper in the galaxy. Dr. Susan Clark had been monitoring the battle from her laboratory. She made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral, I know what these things are," she announced over the fleet communication system. "They are not from this galaxy. They are invaders from somewhere else." "How do you know?" Jake asked. "The energy patterns are all wrong for local space. These creatures evolved in a place where the laws of physics work differently. That is why. They can move through solid matter. Captain Katie Brooks had been listening to the conversation. If they are not from here, how did they get here? Susan had been wondering the same thing. I think they travel from galaxy to galaxy, eating everything they find. When they finish with one galaxy, they move to the next. The implications were terrifying. These creatures had consumed entire galaxies before, and this one small battle was just the beginning. Colonel Ben Hayes reported his findings from the ground combat. His Marines had managed to kill several creatures that tried to board their ship, but the cost was high. The explosive rounds worked better than bullets, he told the fleet commanders. But we lost 12 men. These things learned fast how to fight us. Admiral Jake Morrison gathered all the information from his ships and made a decision that would have shocked the peaceful Federation races. All ships, prepare for deep patrol operations. We are going hunting, sir, asked Katie Brooks. Hunting? For what? More of these things. If they are coming from somewhere else, we need to find their source and stop them there. The Federation survivors could not believe what they were hearing. The humans were not content to just defend themselves. They wanted to attack the enemy in their own territory. Captain Yelenara sent a private message to Jake. Admiral, you do not understand. These creatures have destroyed thousands of civilizations. No one has ever been able to stop them completely. Jake's reply was typical of human thinking. Maybe that is because no one has ever tried hard enough. Dr. Susan Clark continued her research while the fleet prepared for extended operations. She discovered that the shadow creatures left a trail of energy disturbance wherever they went. It was like following footprints through space. I can track them, she told Jake. I can find where they came from. How long will it take? Jake asked. Give me 2 days to refine the tracking system, and we can follow their trail back to its source. The human ships spent those 2 days repairing damage and resupplying their weapons. The crews worked with a determination that amazed the surviving Federation observers. Private Tyler. Adams came up with another idea while cleaning his weapon. What if we build bigger explosives? Like really big ones? Colonel Ben Hayes liked the way this young Marine thought. How big are you talking about? Big enough to crack a planet, sir, Ben smiled. In the Federation, such an idea would be considered insane and evil. Among humans, it was just another tool for winning wars. When Dr. Susan Clark finished her tracking system, she made an announcement that sent chills through everyone who heard it. I found their trail, she said, but there is bad news. The trail leads toward the center of our galaxy. And it is not just one group of creatures. There are thousands of them, maybe millions. Jake Morrison looked at the star charts showing the massive swarm of shadow creatures moving toward populated Federation space. A normal military leader might have called for evacuation. A Federation leader would have tried diplomacy. Jake Morrison ordered his fleet to prepare for the largest battle in human history. Send a message to Earth, he told his communications officer. Tell them we need every ship we have got. We're going to war. General Frank Miller arrived at the battle zone with the largest fleet Earth had ever assembled. 200 warships dropped out of hyperspace, in perfect formation. The massive dreadnought U.S. Retribution led the fleet, its hull bristling with railguns and missile launchers. The Federation survivors had never seen anything like it. Captain Yelenara watched from her damaged ship as the human war fleet took position. Each ship was built for one purpose only, to destroy enemies. How did they build so many warships so quickly? She asked her science officer. According to our intelligence reports, humans have been preparing for war since they first learned about space travel, came the reply. They expected to find enemies out here. Admiral Jake Morrison transferred his command to the UES Retribution. Captain Sam Rodriguez welcomed him aboard the massive ship. Sam was a veteran of Earth's space conflicts, with graying hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. What are our orders, Admiral? Sam asked. Jake looked at the tactical display showing thousands of shadow creatures moving toward Federation space. We stopped them here. All of them. The human fleet spread out across the system in a defensive formation that covered millions of miles. But this was not just defense. It was a trap. Colonel Pete Jackson commanded the ground forces aboard the troop. Transport U.S. Overlord, soldiers were equipped with new weapons designed specifically for fighting the shadow creatures. Instead of energy weapons, they carried kinetic rifles and explosive launchers. Men, Pete addressed his troops over the ship's communication system. We are about to do something no other species has ever tried. We are going to land on planets controlled by these things and take them back. The soldiers looked at each other with a mixture of fear and excitement. Landing on a planet full of shadow creatures was either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. Dr. Karen White had been working with captured shadow creature samples for weeks. Her laboratory aboard the intelligence ship U.S. Phantom was filled with strange equipment that most people could not understand. I think I have found something important, she told Captain Rob Mitchell. These creatures are not just connected to each other. They are controlled by something bigger. Rob looked at her research data. What kind of something? I'm not sure yet. But all the energy patterns point to a central source, like they are all parts of one giant mind. This information was sent immediately to Admiral Morrison. If the shadow creatures had a central control system, then destroying it might stop all of them at once. Commander Julie Watson led the first fighter attack against the incoming shadow swarm. Her squadron of 50 fighters was armed with kinetic cannons and explosive missiles. The small, fast ships could move in ways that the larger warships could not. Target the big ones first, she told her pilots. Save the small fry for last. Fighters dove into the shadow swarm like angry wasps. Their weapons tore through the creatures, leaving trails of destroyed enemies behind them. But for every shadow they killed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Admiral Troy Bennett commanded the Heavy Cruiser Division. His ships formed the backbone of the human defense. When the shadow creatures tried to break through the fighter's screen, they ran into walls of railgun fire and missile explosions. Continuous fire, Troy ordered his fleet. Do not let them get close. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The shadow creatures attacked in waves, trying to overwhelm the human defenses through sheer numbers. The humans responded with disciplined firepower and tactical coordination. Captain Danny Walsh found himself in command of a mixed group of human and Federation ships. The few surviving alien vessels tried to help, but their weapons were useless against the shadows. Stay back and coordinate targeting information, Danny told the Federation ships. Let us do the shooting. It was frustrating for the alien crews to watch the battle without being able to help. They had spent centuries believing that violence was primitive and unnecessary. Now they saw that sometimes violence was the only thing that worked. Private Tyler Adams got his wish for bigger explosives. Colonel Ben Hayes had authorized the use of nuclear weapons against the shadow creatures. Tyler was in charge of a team that would deliver the warheads directly to enemy positions. Remember, Ben told Tyler's team, these are not energy weapons. They work by pushing matter apart very hard and very fast. Its shadow should not be able to absorb the explosion. Tyler nodded. He had volunteered for this mission because he wanted to test his theory about explosives. If he was wrong, he and his team would die. If he was right, they might save the galaxy. Dr. Karen White made her breakthrough while the battle was raging. Around them, she discovered that the shadow creatures communicated through quantum entanglement, a process that allowed instant communication across any distance. Captain Mitchell, she called excitedly. I know how to disrupt their network. Rob hurried to her laboratory. How? If I can create a quantum virus, a pattern that spreads through their communication system, it might break their connection to the central control. Can you do it? Karen looked at her equipment. I need a live shadow creature to test it on. Rob smiled grimly. I think we can arrange that. The EU's Phantom moved carefully through the battle zone, looking for a shadow creature that had been wounded but not killed. Captain Rob found one that was moving slowly after being hit by several railgun slugs, using a special containment field that did not use energy. They captured the creature and brought it to Karen's laboratory. It was the first time anyone had successfully captured one of the shadows alive. It is beautiful in a terrifying way, Karen said, studying the creature. It exists in multiple dimensions at once. That is how it can move through solid matter. She began working on her quantum virus while the battle continued outside. The process was dangerous if she made a mistake. The virus might affect human technology instead of the shadow creatures. Meanwhile, Colonel Pete Jackson launched the first ground assault on one of the consumed planets. His soldiers dropped from orbit in armored pods, landing in the middle of a city full of twisted metal and shadow creatures. Spread out and secure the landing zone, Pete ordered as his men hit the ground. The shadow creatures attacked immediately. They flowed out of the twisted buildings like liquid darkness, surrounding the human soldiers. But Pete's men were ready. Fire at will, Pete shouted. The kinetic weapons and explosives worked even better on the ground than in space. The shadow creatures could not dodge as icily in the confines of the ruined city. Human soldiers advanced steadily, clearing buildings one by one. Private Tyler Adams detonated his first nuclear weapon in the center of a large group of shadow creatures. The explosion vaporized dozens of them instantly. More importantly, it seemed to disrupt their ability to communicate with each other. It worked, Tyler reported to his colonel. The nuke broke their connection. The survivors are acting confused. This information was immediately sent to the fleet. Admiral Morrison ordered nuclear strikes on the largest concentrations of shadow creatures. The weapons did not just destroy the enemies, they isolated them from their hive mind. Dr. Karen White finished her quantum virus at the same time. She tested it on the captured shadow creature and watched as it began to behave erratically. The creature seemed to lose its connection to the others and started moving randomly. It works, she announced. The virus disrupts their quantum entanglement. If I can spread this through their network, it will cut off their central control. Admiral Morrison made the decision to use both weapons at once. Nuclear strikes break up the shadow swarms, while the quantum virus would prevent them from reconnecting. Captain Rob Mitchell's ship moved close to the largest group of shadow creatures. Using a special transmitter, they broadcast Karen's virus directly into the enemy formation. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Thousands of shadow creatures suddenly stopped their coordinated attack and began moving in random directions. Without their hive mind, they were just individual predators with no plan. The human fleet pressed their advantage. Admiral Troy Bennett's heavy cruisers moved forward, destroying the confused shadow creatures with concentrated railgun fire. Commander Julie Watson's fighters swept through the scattered enemies, picking off stragglers, but the victory came at a cost. The humans had lost 50 ships and thousands of crew members. The shadow creatures fought desperately when they realized they were losing, throwing themselves at the human vessels in suicide attacks. Colonel Pete Jackson's ground forces had taken heavy casualties as well. Of the 5,000 soldiers who had landed on the planet, only 3,000 were still fighting. But they had accomplished something that no other species had ever done. They had retaken a world from the shadow creatures. The planet is secure, Pete reported to Admiral Morrison. We have cleared all major population centers. Shadows are retreating to the outer regions. Jake Morrison looked at the tactical display. The immediate threat was over, but this was just one battle in what promised to be a long war. The shadow creatures had been defeated here, but there were more of them coming from the galaxy's center. Send a message to Earth, Jake ordered. Tell them we need more ships, more soldiers, and more weapons. This is just the beginning.